The fluorescent lights of Murphy's corner store buzzed overhead as Maria Gonzalez counted the crumpled bills in her wallet for the third time. $12.37. It was Tuesday, 3 days before payday, and she was calculating whether she could afford the gallon of milk her 8-year-old daughter Sophia needed for her cereal. Next, called out Frank Murphy from behind the counter, his thick Boston accent cutting through the evening air. The store was busy for 6 p.m. on a weekday, commuters grabbing coffee, construction workers buying energy drinks, and the usual mix of neighborhood regulars who treated Murphy's like their second home. Maria stepped forward, placing the milk on the counter along with a loaf of bread and a small jar of peanut butter. As Frank rang up her items, she did the math in her head, $8.47. That would leave her with $3.90 for the rest of the week. Enough for bus fare to work and maybe a cup of coffee if she was careful. That'll be $8.47, Frank confirmed, his weathered hands already reaching for a paper bag. As Maria handed over the exact change, she caught sight of the Powerball display behind the counter. The jackpot had climbed to $127 million, and the bright yellow sign seemed to mock her with its promise of impossible dreams. She'd never bought a lottery ticket in her life. Her mother had always called them a tax on people who can't do math, but something about the number made her pause. $127 million, more money than she could even conceptualize. "You okay, hun?" Frank asked, noticing her hesitation. Maria shook her head, embarrassed. "Sorry, I was just ... She gestured vaguely toward the lottery display. Frank chuckled. "Everyone's been eyeing that jackpot. Thing's been rolling over for 3 months now. Sooner or later, somebody's gonna hit it." Behind her, she could hear the impatient shuffle of the next customer, a businessman checking his phone and sighing audibly. Maria grabbed her bag and started to walk away, but something made her stop. Maybe it was the memory of that morning's conversation with her landlord about the rent increase, or the notice from Sophia's school about overdue lunch money, or the way her old Honda had been making that ominous clicking sound for the past week. Actually, she heard herself saying, turning back to the counter, "Can I get a Powerball ticket?" The businessman behind her sighed louder, but Frank smiled. "Quick, pick, or you want to choose your numbers." Maria's heart was pounding. She was about to spend $2 she didn't have on something that was statistically more likely to be struck by lightning. But as she thought about Sophia at home, working on homework at their small kitchen table under the dim light, because they'd been using the same burnt-out bulb for 2 months, she found herself nodding. "Quick pick," she said quietly. Frank fed the ticket into the machine, and Maria watched the numbers print out. 07142345152. Powerball 18. She stared at the numbers for a moment, trying to find some meaning in them, some sign that she hadn't just wasted money they desperately needed. "Good luck," Frank said, handing her the ticket along with her receipt. Maria folded the ticket carefully and slipped it into her wallet, already regretting the decision. As she walked out into the cool October evening, she passed a homeless man sitting outside the store. She thought about the $2 she'd just spent and wondered if she should have given it to him instead. At least that would have done some immediate good. The walk home to her apartment in Dorchester took 20 minutes, through streets lined with triple-deckers and small businesses that had seen better days. This was working-class Boston, where dreams were measured in making rent on time and maybe having enough left over for a family pizza night once a month. Maria had lived in the same second-floor apartment for 4 years, ever since Sophia's father had left, and she'd been forced to find something she could afford on a school custodian's salary. The building was old but clean, and Mrs. Patterson downstairs was kind enough to watch Sophia after school until Maria got home from her evening shift cleaning offices downtown. "Mama," Sophia called out as Maria climbed the stairs, her daughter's voice bright with excitement. "Mrs. Patterson helped me with my math homework, and I got all the problems right." Maria smiled genuinely for the first time all day. Sophia was brilliant consistently at the top of her class, despite the challenges they faced. Her teachers said she had the potential to get into any college she wanted, if they could find a way to pay for it. Another impossible dream, in a life full of them. "That's wonderful, Mia," Maria said, hanging up her jacket and pulling Sophia into a hug. "Show me what you learned." They sat at the small kitchen table, and Sophia walked her through fraction problems with the patience of a natural teacher. As they worked, Maria found herself thinking about the lottery ticket in her wallet. What would she do with $127 million? The question felt so absurd that she almost laughed out loud. First, She'd pay off all their debts, the credit cards she'd maxed out during Sophia's bout with pneumonia last winter, the medical bills that kept arriving despite her insurance, the back rent she'd been struggling to catch up on. Then she'd buy Sophia everything she'd ever wanted, new clothes that weren't from the thrift store, a computer for schoolwork, maybe even piano lessons like she'd been asking for. But as Sophia continued explaining her homework, Maria realized her fantasies weren't even that extravagant. She wasn't dreaming of mansions or sports cars. She was dreaming of stability, of being able to pay bills without counting change, of giving Sophia opportunities that didn't depend on scholarships and luck. "Mama, are you listening?" Sophia asked, looking up with concern. "Of course, baby. Sorry, I was just thinking about work tomorrow." That night, after Sophia had gone to bed, Maria sat at the kitchen table with her bills spread out before her. The rent notice, the electricity bill, the minimum payment on her credit card, it all added up to more than she made in a month. She'd been juggling these payments for so long that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to not worry about money constantly. She pulled out the lottery ticket and looked at the numbers again. 0714234152. Powerball 18. They looked so ordinary, just random digits on a piece of paper. But tomorrow night, those numbers might change everything. Or more likely, they'd prove her mother right about lottery tickets being a waste of money. The next evening, Maria found herself staying late at the Seaport District office building where she worked her second job. She'd volunteered to clean an extra floor. The overtime pay would help cover Sophia's school supplies for next weekend. By the time she finished, it was nearly 11 p.m. The building was eerily quiet. Just the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. As she packed up her cleaning supplies, Maria remembered the lottery drawing. It was scheduled for 10:59 p.m., which meant the numbers had already been called. She pulled out her phone and searched for the Powerball results, her heart beating faster. Despite herself, she'd managed to push the ticket out of her mind for most of the day, but now the anticipation was overwhelming. The Massachusetts lottery website was slow to load on her phone, and she found herself holding her breath as the page finally appeared. The winning numbers stared back at her from the screen. 0714234152. Powerball 18. Maria blinked and read them again, then a third time. Her phone screen seemed to blur as she fumbled for her wallet, pulling out the ticket with shaking hands. She held it up to the fluorescent light of the office building, comparing each number carefully. 0714234152. Powerball 18. They matched, every single one. For a moment, she stood completely still in the empty office building, staring at the ticket in her hands. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to people like her. There had to be a mistake. She checked the date on the ticket. Yes, it was for tonight's drawing. She checked the numbers again. They were identical. She even checked to make sure she was looking at the right lottery game. Everything matched perfectly. Maria Gonzalez, who had hesitated to spend $2 on a lottery ticket, had just won $127 million. The realization hit her like a physical force, and she had to sit down on the floor of the office building. Her hands were shaking so violently that she could barely hold the ticket. She tried to call Sophia, then remembered her daughter was asleep at Mrs. Patterson's apartment. She tried to think of someone else to call, but who do you tell that you've just become a millionaire at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday night? Instead, she called her sister Carmen in Springfield. "Maria, drunk, why are you calling so late?" Carmen's voice was thick with sleep and worry. "Carmen, I need you to do something for me. Go online and look up tonight's Powerball numbers." "What, Maria? Are you okay? It's almost midnight. Please, just do it. Look up the winning numbers for tonight's Powerball drawing." She heard Carmen getting out of bed, the sound of a computer starting up. After what felt like hours but was probably only a few minutes, Carmen's voice came back on the line. "Okay, I've got them. 0714234152. And the Powerball is 18. Maria, why do you need?" Carmen stopped mid-sentence. Oh my God, you didn't." "I did." Maria's voice was barely a whisper. "You bought a ticket, and you won." "Maria, are you telling me you won the lottery?" Saying it out loud made it real in a way that seeing the numbers hadn't. "I think so, Carmen. I think I just won $127 million. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long that Maria thought the call had dropped. Finally, Carmen spoke, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Where are you right now? Are you somewhere safe?" I'm at work, in the office building. Carmen, what do? I don't know what to do. First, you need to sign that ticket right now. Right now, Maria. And then you need to put it somewhere safe. Do you have a safe place to put it? Maria looked around the empty office. She was holding a piece of paper worth more money than she'd ever imagined, and she was alone in a building at midnight. I'll put it in my purse. In the inside pocket. Good. Now listen to me very carefully. Don't tell anyone else about this tonight. Not Mrs. Patterson, not anyone at work, nobody. Tomorrow, you're going to call in sick, and you're going to go straight to a bank. You need to put that ticket in a safety deposit box, and then you need to find a lawyer. As Carmen continued giving her instructions, Maria found herself thinking about Sophia. Her daughter was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that their lives had just changed forever. Tomorrow, Sophia would wake up and get ready for school just like always, not knowing that she'd never have to worry about money again. But as the initial shock began to wear off, a new kind of anxiety crept in. Maria had read enough stories about lottery winners to know that sudden wealth could be as much of a curse as a blessing. People who won millions and lost everything within a few years. Families torn apart by greed and jealousy. The sudden attention from strangers, lawyers, and long-lost relatives. Carmen, what if this ruins everything? What if it ruins Sophia's life? Maria, listen to me. Money doesn't ruin lives, people do. You're smart, you're careful, and you love that little girl more than anything in the world. You'll figure it out. But right now, you need to get home safely and get some sleep. After hanging up, Maria sat alone in the empty office building for a few more minutes, trying to process what had just happened. In the space of 24 hours, she'd gone from counting change at a corner store to holding a winning lottery ticket worth more money than most people made in several lifetimes. The ride home on the late-night bus felt surreal. She clutched her purse tightly, hyper-aware of the ticket inside. Every person who got on the bus seemed suspicious. Every glance in her direction felt loaded with meaning. She was probably being paranoid, but she couldn't shake the feeling that somehow everyone could tell what had happened. When she finally made it back to her apartment building, Mrs. Patterson was waiting for her. You're late tonight, dear. Everything all right? Just had to work some overtime, Maria replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Thank you for watching Sophia. She's sleeping in my guest room. Poor thing was so tired from all that homework. You can leave her there tonight if you'd like. No, you have to be up early for your morning shift. Maria nodded gratefully. She needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how to handle what came next. As she climbed the stairs to her empty apartment, she realized that this was probably the last night she'd ever spend worrying about money. But as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she discovered that having $127 million brought an entirely different set of worries she'd never considered before.